They fled Jewish Wrocław to Israel from here. And then my mother was born in Israel, and she later moved to the States, and they married my father, and all of my father's grandparents are from Poland. So it's weird how much of me is from Poland.
Some of your family, do they still live here in Poland?
I do have some family in the mountains. I believe they own a, I've never been there, but I believe they own a lodge or a hotel in the mountains in Poland. My great-grandparents are from that area.
So they come from Wrocław. Have you visited Wrocław?
I was born and raised in America. My grandmother is from Wrocław, but she fled during the Holocaust to Israel. Her name was Ruth Epstein. There my mother was born in Israel. And then later my mother moved to America, where she met my father. And again Polish. My father's, all four of his grandparents came from Poland. So I grew up as this Jewish, Polish kid in America, actually.
And they didn't speak to you in Polish?
We ate a lot of Polish things, like pierogies. But I'm finding it's not Polish, but we always love to dance polka music. Just on my father's side, grew up with a very Polish culture. But my mother's Israeli, so my mother was born in Israel, so very Jewish Polish I was raised. Interesting upbringing, but for me today it's an honor for me because I feel like after all these generations, God is allowing me to come to Poland to be a voice, for my people, for the Jewish people, for my people, and be a bridge between the Christian world, because not only am I Jewish, but I also believe in Jesus. We call him Yeshua in Hebrew. So, okay, my name is Joshua Aaron.
You have Jewish roots, but also is it your choice to become, Christian also? Yeah.
Well, most Jewish believers like me, we don't call ourselves Christians. Although we do, but we don't. It's a first century restoration, so to speak. So my mother, when she accepted Messiah, when she accepted Jesus, it was through a Messianic rabbi, a rabbi who believed in Jesus, and he shared about Jesus in this Jewish way. And up until that point, my mother didn't want anything to do with Christianity because of this negative history. Of course, they weren't real Christians, but because our people were killed by so many so-called Christians, it's hard for a Jewish person to say, oh, I want to become a Christian. Historically, in Jewish culture, it's like every Jewish person knows what was done to Jewish people in the name of Christianity. And of course, you and I both know none of those people were true Christians. So my mother didn't want to become a Christian ever, but she was very intrigued by Jesus. Until in the moment when this rabbi came to town and shared about Jesus in a Jewish way, about this first century rabbi that came, who was the greatest rabbi that ever lived. He had these miracles and he fulfilled all of the prophecies. So my mother always used to teach us and tell us, she said, when I accepted Jesus, she said, I didn't convert to Christianity. She said, I completed my Judaism when I accepted the greatest rabbi as my Jewish Messiah, who is Jesus. So we call him Yeshua, and we very much consider ourselves brothers and sisters to Christians, of course.
Maybe your name comes from this denomination, the name of Jesus?
Yoshua, yes. It's some say that he might have also been called Yoshua. The Hebrew is Yehoshua, and the short version is Yeshua. Yehoshua means God is my salvation. Yeshua means salvation. So Jesus, his name, Yeshua, simply means salvation. So my name means God is my salvation.
Could you say something about your music? It's called, how to say, Integrity Music?
So, I'm a songwriter with Integrity Music, based out of Nashville. They're an international record company. I'm an independent artist, so I'm only a songwriter with them. So I get to write songs with some just amazing songwriters from around the world. But for me, I'm an independent artist, so all my music is released independently. And thank God for YouTube. So YouTube is really the platform that allows us to reach people around the world. About, I think, 1.2 million views a month on our YouTube page, which helps us reach more people. I'm a father of 5. So my wife Jeannie, we've been married. So for me, YouTube is is a beautiful tool because I don't want to travel every week. I want to be a good father. So it's hard to balance being a good husband and father and want to reach the nations for Jesus, for Yeshua.
And how would you describe your music? What is it about, and what genre?
It's the genre, on iTunes it's under the world genre. So, like my album Every Tribe was released back in 2016, and it was #1 in the world genre on iTunes on its release date, which is pretty cool. But really, some would call it Messianic. I'm a Messianic Jew. I believe that Messiah has come, Jesus, Yeshua has come, so we're considered Messianic Jews. So some would call it Messianic. But for me, I accepted the Lord when I was 5. And that very next day, I started writing these little songs. And I became absolutely obsessed with the idea of Messiah's return to earth. So a lot of my music is about him coming back and the nations gathering together and preparing the way for his return. So I'm very passionate about the Messiah and his coming, and Israel, because I believe Israel plays a major prophetic part. And that's why I now live there with my wife and 5 kids. Maybe we should even mention that we're in a cafe.
Yeah. And the sounds of music, what is it? Is it like kind of gospel or worship, or what is it?
Oh gosh,
Pop, soul?
it varies. Because I'm a songwriter, I love all sorts of styles. So some of it is very Jewish, oompa, as we call it, oompa, very very upbeat oompa. And my newest album is very Jewish pop. So I'm singing the Psalms with a pop sound, but with those minor Jewish feel of those chords. So some of my friends in LA and Nashville would call it Jew pop. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's kind of a pop feel. But then I'm a worshiper at heart, so there's always those core songs I always go back to that I've written that are very congregational, very worshipful as well.
What now you're in which state have you been grown up?
In America, or in America, I grew up in Pennsylvania, the state of Pennsylvania.
Okay, and now you're living close to
on the Sea of Galilee. Yes, I live near Tiberias, and my children go to school at the north or the south side of the Sea of Galilee, where we live.
Why have you decided to move to Israel?
The Bible is very clear that in the last days that God would gather the Jewish people from the 4 corners of the earth, and I felt very convicted by God that my mother's Israeli. She moved to America at a young age. Her mother brought her to America, and she didn't want to go to America. And I remember growing up thinking, one day, this is where I'm going to be. And so I knew that it was a calling from God prophetically, to be a part of that gathering of the exiles after 2,000 years. So for me, it's a calling to be back in Israel. And it's very inspiring to write songs from the Sea of Galilee, especially as a believer in Jesus, in Yeshua.
And how is it possible to maintain the Jewish tradition and do you feel Christian also, or how do you?
Yeah, for me, if you read the writings from the 1st, 2nd, 3rd century Christians, it was still extremely Jewish. As a matter of fact, the first 3 centuries they were sending their tithes not to Rome, they were sending to Jerusalem until the Constantinian era came. So we kind of really mirror more that 1st, 2nd century because we're Jewish. Because if you read the book of Revelation, the nation of Israel will be once again Jewish. If you read the book of Revelation, so I feel like it's a calling for us as a Jewish people when we come back to be grateful for Christian history, some of the beautiful good sap that's come, but also there's a restoration, I believe, in Israel that needs to happen to Jewish things, because when Jesus comes back, he comes back to the Mount of Olives. His feet will sit there. He will rise up to the Temple Mount once again. And so for us, it's a restoration of things, specifically in Israel. So we celebrate the Jewish feasts. My daughter had her bat mitzvah. My son, I have 1 daughter and 4 sons, so celebrating his bar mitzvah, where he'll go up to read the Torah portion, just as Jesus did when he reached his bar mitzvah. He'll read a passage from the Old Testament. So for us, it's very important to maintain our Jewish heritage biblically, not necessarily matching all the rabbinical, because a lot of things have come culturally and rabbinical history. So more of a first century, what Jesus probably would have done.
How to describe a Christian, Jewish, or
Messianic Jew?
and you are not so many in the whole world, no?
No, I in Israel maybe 20 to 30,000 Messianic Jews, Jewish people that believe in Jesus as the Messiah. And in the world, I think there's a few hundred thousand. I'm guessing. I don't know for sure.
Do you have any community in your place where you live, or how do you pray, or how do you meet each other?
Yeah, we have great community. There's a lot of Messianic synagogues. We call them the kehilot, which basically just means communities. So we'll meet on Shabbat and break bread together and read from the Old Testament and the New Testament and celebrate not only the God of Israel, but celebrate Israel's salvation through Jesus, through Yeshua.
Your memories from Poland? Your first and second time?
My first time, I was invited by the Catholic Church for World Youth Day, and it was a stage with 3 million. I think there's 3 million. I think. So I was. Oh gosh, we have a thing called Natilat Yadayim. It's a beautiful prayer that comes from the Tanakh, the Old Testament. You know, who may ascend the hill of the Lord, but he who has clean hands and a pure heart. And I remember walking up to the stage to sing "How Great Is Our God" in Hebrew, saying this prayer, and you symbolically wash your hands and say, "God, prepare me for this to go before you in front of the congregation of these people." And it was a very special moment for me, especially to be in Poland.
A few of your songs where you won a prize with music awards.
You Are Holy and Hoshiana. You Are Holy was a song I'd written several years ago from Joshua 24:15. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And it just became an anthem for my family. And it's one of my favorite congregational songs I've ever written.
Your kids are also... They will become musicians, or somebody is playing already?
Yeah, my oldest daughter plays guitar and not guitar. She plays the piano, and the ukulele. And then my son Shuki plays the guitar and the ukulele. And all my kids have lovely voices, but I don't push them too much because I think it's dangerous for a child, even if you're a Christian singer or a religious singer, to stand in front of people. It's sometimes it does something. I'm very careful not to put my children in front of people because I want them to be a little more mature before they feel that sort of that struggle that everybody feels, that all of us feel. Like when people look at you, even though you're singing to God, people are looking at you, and there's that battle within the heart of man, that pride that can start. So my kids are very sweet and humble kids, and I want to keep it that way. So they sing and they make music, and little by little I'll have them involved. But I try not to push them too much.
How do you keep the stress on the stage? How do you control?
I don't know. I just try not to think about it until I go up, until right the minute before I go up, and practice before.
If you want to add something?
Yeah, I would like to say something. I love this country, and I grew up in America, and then my life, a big part of my life is in Israel now. To be in Poland is very special for me. I am honored, and history comes to life even more. That this tragedy of my grandmother having to leave Poland because of losing many of her family in the Holocaust, and she left as a child. She made it out to Israel from Poland, from how do you pronounce it? Wrocław. But for me to come back full circle, it's a beautiful country, beautiful people, amazing hearts. So I'm hooked on Poland. I think I'll be coming even more often in the future. Thank you for the interview. Nice to meet you.